Hey everyone, I think it has been a long enough time that we are going to redo a very long form clay tutorial because the team has just changed a bunch of the UI and there's so many new features and things like that I just wanted to hop in and show this. So if this is your first time and you don't know who I am and you're just viewing this video, my name is Eric Noslowski. We send about 1.4 to 1.5 million cold emails a month, and we use Clay for everything. I was on the team at clay.com for a year. I helped build the product while I was there, as well as evangelize it. And a lot of the features that are in here today are things that I helped to do. My agency is the top referrer for the Clay program, and we use more credits than any other company on the platform. So I hope you will believe me when I say that we know Clay really well, and we're going to jump in right now. All right. So this is what the Clay workspace looks like when you first sign in. This is just an account that I have that's just this isn't our real account. This is just kind of a burner account that we have. And so there's a couple of things that you need to think about when you're working in Clay. Is one, don't freak out with how complicated you might think that it is. All it is just a spreadsheet connected with APIs and integrations and all of these things. And so we're going to go through everything as hopefully linearly as we possibly can, where we're first going to talk about how you get data into Clay and all of the different options that you have. Now that the data is in Clay, how do you set up an integration? We're going to talk about how you use formulas inside of the columns. We're going to talk about how you use conditional formulas. And then we're going to talk about how you send data outside of Clay. And then maybe we'll end with a little overview of integrations, what they do, what you can expect from them, and those kind of things, and maybe some AI prompting as well too. And so I hope that sounds like a game plan. Let's first kick off with how we get data into Clay. When you're first in Clay, you can hit this button over here and that says create new, and you can use templates, you can set up a blank table, or you can use any of these data sources in order to add data. And so you can import companies from your HubSpot, you can import from a CSV, you could import using Google Maps, you could find people from a Sales Navigator URL, which is amazing, and a bunch of other different, you can use Appify. There's just a bunch of other things that you can do that are really, really, really great. And so we're going to just do it by finding companies from this source right here. And we're just going to get ourselves set up that way. Everything else, if you're just importing the data, each source has its own kind of nuance to it. But anyway, we're just going to jump in with this. And so this is basically giving you a very high level filter of ways that you can filter companies that usually are showing up on LinkedIn, right? So you have all of the industries in here, and we could say something like software, and we can, what would SaaS even be? Technology, information, and internet, right? So we'll put this industry in, and then we can very quickly, we can just hit preview companies, and you can get a list of all of the companies that are in the database that are for this. And so there's 82,000, and it's just capped at 25,000 because of this just plan that I'm on in here. And you could cap it even lower on that if you wanted. But you could also search by city or state or anything else that you might want, head count, description keywords, exclude things from the description keywords. You could exclude companies from a Clay table you already have. You can even start from lookalikes. There's a bunch of different things that you can do in here. And so we're just going to limit this to 100 so you don't get crazy. And so we'll just preview these companies, and then we've got all of these companies in here. And so now we're going to import this data into a Clay table right now. And then you'll be able to enrich the company. You could look for company headcount growth, a lot of things that people might want right off the bat. But we're going to select none for now, and we're going to continue for free. And so now we have just added our first list to a Clay table, and I hope nobody was overwhelmed, and I hope it was pretty easy, and we're all good to go, right? And so let me just check here. Okay, great. So now we have our data in our Clay table. There's other ways, of course, we could get data in. If you're looking for local businesses, finding local businesses on Google Maps is a great way to be able to do that. You could scrape Sales Navigator. There's lots of different ways that you'd be able to get data inside of your Clay workflow. And I hope this is, showing you that no matter what you import, it's going to be the data that you expected. And it just is going to fill in a spreadsheet exactly the way like this. Everything's going to be filled in. Now, Once you have the data in Clay, you of course want to use integrations and you want to enrich it. And for some reason, I feel like this is where people get confused. But just keep in mind that you've been doing this your entire life as a salesperson, as a marketer, as a founder. What you're about to do inside of Clay, you've been doing your entire life. We're just streamlining it here. And so, what I mean by that is oftentimes the way that we used to do this is you used to build a list of companies and then you would say, okay, I've got the domains now. And now that I have the domains, now I'm going to import this CSV to something like apollo.io so I can turn these domains in and I can enrich it for company headcount, industry, their location, and all of these other things, right? And so all an integration is just pinging one of your favorite data providers with the data that you have in the list and getting those results back, right? And so that's all that's really happening here. Don't let Clay or what people say on the internet confuse you. All we're doing here is we're just turning a data point and we're just enriching it for more things, right? And so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to set up a very easy integration where we are going to enrich this data for more company data. So Clay is providing this data for free, but say I wanted the data about how many technologies are installed on this website, right? And so the best place to get that data would be built with. So I'm going to click on add a column over here. And so we can click on add enrichment. We could also create text columns. We can create formulas, merge columns, all these other things. But for right now, we're just going to click add enrichment before we go into anything else. And so the way we can add an enrichment here is we just can go to built with. We can just search it up and we can find a technology stack right here. So we're going to click on this one. And so you have the option to choose between your built with API key using the Clay shared key, or you can add your own account. Now, as a quick aside, I always recommend people to add your own account and use the API key from there, because this is yet another thing that people get wrong about Clay. Everybody says Clay is ridiculously expensive and it's so expensive they can't use it, all these other things. Yes, the Clay credits are expensive. The reason that they are expensive is because Clay is not like any other data provider that you have access to. When you purchase ZoomInfo, when you purchase Apollo, when you purchase Seamless, when you purchase LeadIQ, all these other platforms, nothing against these platforms, but their business model is they have found the data on a contact. They have found the data on a company, and you buy that data, and then 1,000 other people buy that data, and there's no more marginal cost for them to supply that data to you than it is for the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, eighth person who's using all of the data. Thousandth person, they're all using the same data, except for maybe email data when somebody changes a job or whatever it might be, then it gets refreshed, whatever. In Clay, things are more expensive because Clay has negotiated on your behalf to be able to purchase data products inside of the platform. And if you find it to be too expensive, use your own API key. The plan that you need to buy is the $350 a month plan, just for the time saving that you're going to have to just be able to use all of the platforms that you're using anyway, but bring them all into Clay. Just the time saving that you receive so that you don't have to switch CSVs and do all this crazy stuff, that's worth $350 a month right there. And so anytime you hear people complaining about data and it's too expensive in Clay and all these other things, bring your own API keys, and then it's as cheap as you can get it anywhere else. Another thing that before we move on that I find people complain about in Clay is they say that the data inside of Clay isn't accurate. That's one thing that maybe the LinkedIn data, you can say, you can have your opinions on the LinkedIn data. But keep in mind, I hear all the time people asking, how good is Clay's email data? How good is their mobile data? How good is their technology data? How good is their fundraising data? Clay does not own any of this data. There are other providers who are bringing that data into the platform. So it's not how good is Clay's mobile phone number data? It's how good is People Data Labs' phone number data? How good is Datagma's phone number data? How good is Forager's phone number data? So two of the biggest complaints I see about Clay, it's too expensive, and you have problems with the data. If it's too expensive, use your own API keys of your favorite platforms. Like it's insane that they don't charge you for bringing in your own API keys, because you're literally undercutting the exact way that they make money. That it's nuts. Just pay the $350 a month. And then on the flip side, if you don't find the data to be accurate, then ask the team for a different data provider, or do your own research, find a different data provider, because all they're doing is just they're bringing the best data providers and they're bringing them in. So it's not Clay's data, it's the overall data, right? And they just did a huge update to the LinkedIn data. So if you had complaints about it in the past, they just did a huge update, and it's a lot better now. And so anyway, I digress, but let's bring it back in. We've brought data into the Clay table here, and now we're going to set up an integration. So this integration works by looking up the domain, and when we look up the domain, we can either pull all of the technology that Built With has associated with this domain, or we can add more filters and we could search for data in particular, right? So we could say, I want to know everybody who's using HubSpot, or I want to know everybody that's using Intercom, or whatever it might be, right? Very, very easy to do those things. Just put it into the keyword or category filter, and then we're going to click continue to add fields. Here you have an option to just push some of the fields from the integration. I'm going to show you how to do that, so this kind of makes a little bit more sense after it runs. But so we'll hit this, we'll save and run 10 rows, just so that we don't go through all of our Clay credits. And then we have our data here. So now see how we have no keyword matches and we have 3 keyword matches? In here, all of the data is sitting inside of these cells. So something that I see a lot of people mess up on is they don't realize that if you click on this data, you'll see everything here. So see how we found the matches here, we found the keywords found, we found the technologies found, and then it's even telling us the number of their total technologies versus the number of their matching technologies. Great. This is everything that we wanted from Built With and more. Now we know who's using HubSpot. We've got all this data. Amazing. Now we have all this. And so now what we could do is if we were to say, okay, I want to know exactly which technologies of HubSpot they're using, we can click add as column, and then we can create a column, and then we are good to go over here. And now we have our own column separated from the main column over here, because you might not want all of this data. So that's why they didn't automatically put the columns in here, because you might not care that the number of total technologies is 193. You just, so that's why it doesn't come out, like that really quickly, right? And so that is how you could set up an integration. And each integration has their own different inputs, and usually it comes down to either the website, the LinkedIn company URL, the LinkedIn URL, or maybe like a first name and a domain, all those different kinds of things. So now one thing that I just want to say is if you don't know if you're missing some things here, right, and there's no domain, we can do some pretty low cost and effective things in order to find the domain in here. And this will also be our first opportunity to set up a waterfall, and we could also set up conditional formulas. So what we're going to do here is if there is no domain, we're going to kick off another workflow, and we're going to try to fill all of these things in. So this will kind of move on to our next part of the lesson. So what we're going to do is we are going to add an enrichment, and we are going to use Clearbit in here. And we are going to use Clearbit to find the domain from company name. And we're going to use the Clay shared key. And so the input that we need is a company name input, which is great because all we have is company name and we want the domain. So we'll take this name and we're going to find it. But what we want to do is, even though this is a free integration, what we want to do is we only want this to run only if the domain does not exist. And so what we can do here is we can click on the run settings, and then we're going to click on use AI in this only run if section. This is a conditional formula section. And so we'll hit this, and we're going to, in natural language, we're just going to ask what we want it to do. And so if you read the instructions, actually, I wonder where they put it. Okay, I'm not sure where they put it, but here it is. Type backslash to insert a column, type backslash to insert a column. It was right in front of my eyes. So if you type backslash, you'll get a column pulled up here. And so we're going to look for domain, and we're going to say domain is empty. Now we're going to generate the formula. And so now, see how we have this preview of whether or not the column will run? So the domain is full here, so the column is not going to run. But the domain is empty in row 16, so the column will run. That's exactly what we wanted. We're going to click output is correct, save formula, and then we can hit continue to add fields, and then we're just going to pull the domain here. So now by clicking domain, notice how when I click this to run it, whoops, let's go to 16. Notice see how it says run condition not met? That just means that it's not going to run because it's not there. So we got no result found. That's fine. We'll work on something else. Let's see if there's anybody we can find a result for. So we're going to run this. We're going to run all these rows. Okay, so we did find a row here. So notice how the domain automatically got populated, because when I was setting this up and I hit save, and I can hit edit columns, and we were in this over here, right? Now, instead of going inside of the integration and then adding it as a column, we can do that during our setup process. So I just wanted to show it to you before so that you knew where it was coming from, but you could also do it in your setup process as well. So now we have our domains over here, which is amazing. That's exactly what we wanted to do. What now we're still missing is we still have some of these that are still missing, right? And so what we can do in here is we can use Clearbit to go find some more data. And so what Clearbit is it is essentially a Google search connected with AI API keys. And so if we just type in Clearbit, we'll pull this up, and it's our own personal website researcher, right? So we have all of this, and we're going to be good to go. So basically, we're just going to prompt it, and we're going to say exactly what we want it to do. Find the website of the company in the input. And I'm going to pause this so you don't just waste time just watching my screen. So I know we're skipping ahead here with some AI prompting. But so basically what we are doing now is I've written out this prompt, and when you're doing your AI prompting, you just want to be very careful that, remember, it's basically like you're speaking to someone who has infinite knowledge, but they have the maturity of a fifth grader. And so you just want to be like very, very particular about what you want. And so I said that I'm going to give it an input for the company name, the city, state, and country headquarters, and then the LinkedIn company URL. So we're going to just give those inputs. So we're going to say these are the inputs, company name, and then anything that is in the table, we can hit backslash and we can move that data into our AI prompt. So we have company name, then we'll have the location, and I'm just going to put city. Oh, did we not get city? Oh no, this is literally the location. Great. So we'll get the location, and then LinkedIn company URL. And again, we're just going to hit backslash, and we're going to get all of this stuff in here. Great. Now, again, there's some other things like using which model you want to use, and all these other things, and your max cost, and all of that. For demonstration purposes, we're not going to worry about that. But again, we're going to set the run settings. So we're going to hit use AI, and then we're going to say, all right, how can we so if there is a domain that exists over here, we don't want this to run. And if the domain exists with our Clearbit workflow, then we don't want it to run as well. So what are we going to do here? So we're going to say domain, whoops, is empty, and then we're going to go to our Clearbit one. This domain is empty. So then we're going to click generate formula. Output is correct. Great. Hit save. And then we're going to run, and basically none of these are going to run because they all have the data. So again, we click on this one to make it run. Nothing's going to run. We click on this one, make it run. Nothing's going to run. But when we go to no result found, and this domain is empty and the other domain is empty, see how this conditional formula, we can layer on top of the conditional formula to make it run over here. That's essentially what we've got going on right now. So now it's using Clearbit. It's going to go out into the internet and is going to try to find a website for this company, which I'm very interested to see. Womack Aerospace. That'd be interesting if they don't have a... Okay, so we found the domain over here, and I'm going to venture to guess that this is their domain because it matches perfectly. But see how we got the company website? We're all good. We got everything that we needed. Now, in summary, what have we achieved so far? We have brought data into a table. We have set up a couple of integrations, and we've used conditional formulas so that we can save credits so that we're only paying for things when we want to be paying for things, right? So essentially, that's where we've gotten. Now, you can also use formulas to manipulate data inside of your table in actual columns, not just the integration. So what we can do here is we can click to add another formula column, and now we're going to make our own formula column. And the formula column I want to make here is we've got a domain in this column, we've got a domain in this column, and we have a domain in this column. So what we want to do is we want to bring all of them together into one. And this is a perfect use case for a formula But I'm also going to show you that they also have this merge columns button here where it'll merge it, like if you have the same data in multiple columns and you want to bring all of them together, merge columns will do that for you. But this is a perfect example to show you a formula. So we're going to go over how we can create a formula in Clay over here as well too, like in the actual spreadsheet integration. So we're going to say if domain is not empty, bring the data here, or if, and then the other domain is not empty, bring the data here, or if, no, not that one, whoops, or if company website is not empty, bring the data here. And so notice how it was as easy as me just normally saying exactly what I wanted. The only thing that I'll give a tip for is, and maybe the Clay team has fixed this, when the formula generator first came out, you'll see me using a lot of if domain is not empty or if domain is empty, because if you were to ask it in the past, if you were to ask it if domain is filled, then it would actually be looking for the keyword filled to be in there. So that's why I always say empty or not empty. But, other than that, this is all just normal language. All we did was we just hit the backslash to just get our data inside of there, and we were good to go. So now we're going to hit generate formula. And now see how we have everything lined up. That doesn't really show us anything because we, the first 10 had all of them from the domain output. So let's just see how this goes. And so now see how we got Womack Aerospace in here. We got This Is Lid in here. And now we have a perfect list of all of the domains that have already run. If you, like I said, this was just a perfect opportunity to show you that a formula could be made over here. If you also wanted to, you could also throw in all of the domains in the merge column. And then that would work as well too. And see, it's all the same stuff, right? So we still got that working over here too. And so now you might be thinking, all right, I've got all of these companies, but I want to email the people at these companies. So there's two ways you could do that. You could click on the Find People button up here, or you can add your enrichment and you can click Find Contacts at company, and you'd be able to do it here as well too. You could keep them in this table here, but I highly suggest on clicking Find People up here so you can find as many people as you want. So now we're going to click Find People. And so now we're setting up how we're going to find, our contacts. So we've got the LinkedIn company URL from this table. And then we can search by job title, experience, bio, location, way more different filters than a normal database is going to let you filter by. So I'm going to look for the CEO and the founders. Oh, but what I want to point out to everybody is that Clay does not have, so if you were to search for titles in Apollo.io, if you search for CEO, they're going to automatically turn that into Chief Executive Officer because they just know that you want that. Clay has not been around as long as Apollo, so keep that in mind. And so that's not going to be in there. So the way I do my searches is I'll do CEO and then I'll do Chief Executive, just because, we don't really need the officer. But then let's say I want all sales leaders as well too. Well, instead of saying vice president of sales or VP of sales or director of sales, all of those different things, I like to keep the of out of it because it's just doing a keyword search. So if you just do director sales, head sales, president sales, VP sales, vice sales, now you're just covering all of your bases and you're getting as many as you possibly can here. So again, then we could pick, we want them all to be in the United States. Anything else here? There's some cool things like minimum months in current role and maximum months in current role and minimum number of experiences and keywords in the experience description and like all this other crazy stuff that you don't get from any other data provider. And so you could also limit the results as well. You can limit them in total, or you could also limit them per company as well too. And so we're just going to hit preview people. And so we've gotten 12 people who fit that. We also pulled in a random list of companies from all over the world. So that makes sense to me as well. We're going to hit import people. We're going to import 12 people to a new table. And then again, we can enrich them with all this stuff, which we're going to talk about in a second. And so now we've pushed on. And so now we've got the imported profiles, which if you click on this, This is all the data available for the imported profiles. And then we've got data from the company table as well. So if you found anything cool from the company table, remember how we found the technology, like the built with technologies and all those things. The only reason this is empty is because it hasn't run, or they don't have HubSpot or Intercom installed on their website. But all of the data that we had in that previous table, we could bring in here because we have the company table data in here that has all of that. So now again, we've got some basic information about these people: first name, last name, full name, job titles, locations, company domains, LinkedIn profiles, all these different things, right? So if what we wanted to do was we wanted to find emails for all of these people, something that we could do is we could just go into our enrichment and we could search for work email. And now this is the first time that we get access to what's called a data waterfall that's already set up within Clay. And so what they've basically done is they've lined up a bunch of providers, and they're going to only charge you if they find data on these people. Now, a waterfall is really great because then you get to check as many data providers as you want. And it even includes a zero bounce validation. You could use a debounce validation or any others that you might want to jump in with. For email validation, again, use your own API key. Don't use Clay credits. It's ridiculously expensive to use Clay credits, right? And so then what we're going to do is, so you can even change these around if you don't agree with the way that Clay has them lined up. You could do anything that you want here. So we can either find an email this way, and we can hit save, and we'll just run 10 rows, and we can do that. Or if you've got your own favorite data provider, you could just set up your own column and do that. And so see how they've automatically added all of the columns in here, and it's just pushing through. So Prospio already found a lot of these emails, which is great. Now you'll see that there are some hidden columns in here where you're not actually seeing all of the validation providers behind the scenes, because they're hiding that for you just to keep the table looking cleaner. And so we have all of this, and I'm just going to remove that as well. This is just, you can edit columns, you can move things around in the column section and everything too. But look at how this is working. Essentially, it's saying, okay, we found this email and it was validated. So now it got pushed to our validated work email over here. And we didn't even have to move to the next provider because Prospio did such a great job of finding all of the emails in here. And so then again, Prospio couldn't find the email address. Drop Contact couldn't find the email address, but Find Email could find the email address. Great. That got validated. It gets pushed over here. We're all good to go. Very nice, right? And we didn't even get to the end. So now we've only been charged credits when we found data. So this makes it really inexpensive to find data because we're only going to be charged. See how we got refunded and we got refunded. You're only going to be charged if you find data. Now, one thing that might happen is if you set up your waterfall, right? And see how we have this set to only safe to send emails is on. If you were to keep this off, there's some catch-all email problems that come in with this validation. And so very quickly, a catch-all email is an email that can't be validated. It can't be validated if it's a good one. It can't be validated if it's a bad one. It's just kind of the way that it is. And so if sometimes you might get some where Prospio will find an email and then Zero Bounce will say, hey, this isn't a valid email address. It's a catch-all email address, so I'm not passing it through. Then you might see Drop Contact find that same email address, ping it to Zero Bounce, and then it's going to keep going, and you're going to be spending money all the way across. That is the one reason I personally don't use the waterfall inside of Clay, just because usually I just find that Prospio finds enough email addresses just for me right off the rip. So I'll just stick with that one. And I don't need the rest of the craziness over here. And so I like to use one or two because by some point they're going to keep finding the same one, and it's just a catch-all email address, and you're kind of just ripping through all of them. And so maybe you want to throw in some ICPs or some Find Email. ICPs is a very, very cheap data provider. Find Email is very, very good at catch-all email verification. So throw one of those in, and that'd be helpful as well too. And so just a quick recap again of everything that we've been over. We have uploaded company lists. We set up our first integrations. We set up conditional formulas. We have set up formulas, and then we found people from a list of websites, and then we set up an email waterfall. At this point, you've done basically everything that you would be needing to do inside of Clay. keep in mind that using your own APIs is cheaper. And if you really want to make sure that you're saving on cost, make sure you're using conditional formulas so that the only reason that you are going to use an integration that's paid, right? Because we paid for this one, we were charged. The only reason you're going to use an integration is that's paid is because you need to. The data is missing, you want to enrich it, or something is just true about the row, and you want to be using your integration there. That's how you don't burn a lot of credits. Make sure you use those conditional formulas. At this point, I'm just going to take an aside for some of the kind of more hidden features of Clay that you might want to be using as well. And then, like I said, we'll go into some AI prompting and all those other things by showing examples of tables that we've built in the past as well too. And so one thing down here is to auto update columns and having that enabled. If you are afraid of setting up your campaigns and your columns and all these things, I would turn this off so that you don't accidentally run a bunch of columns and then you're just going to burn a bunch of Clay credits and you weren't ready. If you're new, turn this on so you're not ripping through a bunch of Clay credits and going crazy, right? You can auto do dedupe across tables as well. That's what this button is for too. So you can look at one column, say the LinkedIn URL column, or the domain column, and anytime a company has that domain, you can remove that from the table. So if you keep adding in data, you're not going to be, enriching the same data over and over and over again. Like I said before, you can move columns around as well from over here. You can hide them, you can show them, you can move them around. From here, you could even rename them, all those different things. You can filter columns as well, whichever column you wanted to filter. If I wanted to filter every domain that contained the letter A, I could do that. And so we have all of these that contain the letter A. Super simple, right? We went from 100 to 60 right here. If you wanted to make a new view, you could create a new view where you say, okay, in this view, I only want to see the enrichment data. So we'll call it enrichment data, and we'll go to our columns and we'll say, I only want to see, the data that's been enriched. Oh, actually what we could do is we can hit hide all columns, and then I can say like domain, technologies found, and then more domains, right? This is something you could just change it around. So now anytime you come in here, we have our default view, which everything, and then we could come in here and we could also change it up with this view as well too. Just showing some things around. So there's also some other functions that you should just know about inside of Clay as well too. And so I would say write to table is maybe one of the most interesting ones, and we'll set that up in a different view. Write to table is maybe one of the most interesting ones see, we have 7 little objects in here. These are just JSON objects in here, right? We've got 7 of them. It'd be sometimes we can add this as a column, and then we can come down here and we can add this as a column, and then we can come down here and we can add this as a column, and that's just fine. But if you don't want them to be added as columns, you wanted them to be added as rows, write to table is the function for you. So if you ever have a list of outputs and you don't want them to be columns, you want them to be their own rows, write to table is what you want to be using for that. So you can just click add enrichment and you can hit write to table. And so then you're going to be able to, oh geez, you have to add your own account. Okay, so real quick, this is like one of the most Clay things ever. You have to go to developer and you have to copy your API key, which after this video, I'm going to change it so you nerds don't do anything to this. But then we put in the API key, which is very funny that they hide it here, but they don't hide it in the other one, whatever. And so then we've got our API key here, and then we can select the table to write these to, or we can hit a new table. Then when we put in our list, you get all of your columns by just hitting the backslash. You go down to here, and then you have access to your list in here. And you can say insert all items. Oh, that wasn't right. I wonder why. This is a valid list. That's very interesting. It might not be working because these are empty, and that's just unfortunate. But then you would be able to move all of your data from the integration and also from this table by using write to other table. Clay also has a lot of great integrations just built into the platform that are totally free. Check them out. Of just, you can score rows in Clays, you could scrape websites, you could find keywords, you can extract URLs from text, you could do a bunch of things just straight in here that is really, really, really helpful. And I just look through these to just see kind of what powers I have access to, and all of those things. Now I'm going to pause the video to think if there's any other small features inside of Clay that you should be aware of before we talk about exporting our data to a campaign. Taking a quick look around, the only other thing I just wanted to show was you can also view all of your tables as a graph so that you could visualize exactly where everything is coming from. So you see we have imported companies, and then we have all of these data points from those imported companies. And then, you could see what's all connected. And so if we were to say input dependencies, that's because for our built with, we have an input dependency of this domain. And then for people search, we have the LinkedIn URL. For company website, remember when we made that prompt, we put in the location, the name, and the LinkedIn URL. That's why we have all those input dependencies. But see, for instance, primary industry isn't an input, so nobody cares, right? But then you could turn that off, and then you could turn on conditional run dependencies. And so then you could say, okay, if the domain doesn't exist, and if the domain doesn't exist over here, the domain goes over here. And then this could also become a dependency as well too. And then it has all the action costs, which you could also get rid of. Another thing is you should be able to create recipes, but that must be on a different account. So if in your account, you could create recipes from here. So that if you work really hard on something you're going to use constantly, you can reuse it a ton. And then you just exit the graph view up here. And so now we're going to go to our original table. And so finally, we've found enough information. We might want to send this someplace. So now we could just export this as a CSV, and we're going to be all set there. Or we could send it to our own sequencing platforms as well too. And so we could click add lead to campaign, where then I'm not going to set up an account right now, but here what you'd be able to do is you could then map your email address, which is in validated work email, and then we'll grab it from here. You can map your email address, and then you can map all of your data as well. So then we're going to have their first name, we'll have their company name, and all of this data. So notice how we don't have company name just straight in here because it's from the table data. So then we'll put in our name right here. And then once you fill all this out, you'd be able to send all of the data and get it all working the same. And so I hope this shows you that, like I said, Clay is not something to necessarily be afraid of. It is just a spreadsheet connected with other integrations. Think of it as if you were to take this data and you were to upload them as CSVs in other places, it's all the same moving around of things, but you're just doing it in one place. And so we're going to go through another workflow that I feel that a lot of people ask for, and I'm not going to talk through it as in detail and as slow. We're going to kind of move through it just so you could see another workflow, right? So another one that people often ask me for is to build a table of companies hiring for certain positions, and then they want to talk to the hiring manager or whoever it might be. So you can use find jobs inside of Clay in order to find a bunch of open positions. So for instance, some open positions in the United States that we could be looking for would be sales development representatives, right? Or SDR, or we'll just put sales development. And then we don't want manager, director, head, president, VP, chief, or any of those things, right? And then we say we want them to be full-time. Great, we'll grab full-time. And then the posting date, we want it to be 14 days since they've posted the ad, right? We'll limit these results to 100 so we don't go crazy. We'll preview the jobs. And we'll just let this run. And okay, great. So there's 2,297 that fit our total criteria, but I limited it to 100. They're giving us a preview of 50 right in front of us, and we can see everything going on here. So this is looking great. We've got the location of the job. We've got the job title. We've got the posted on date. We've got all of this information. So this is great. We're going to move on. So we'll hit import jobs, and then we're going to continue for free so we can just see everything. Now, this is a little bit annoying inside of Clay. If you wanted the job description, you would have to enrich for it by looking at the job data. So we'd look at job openings. Oh, whoops. Find active job openings. And then the identifier would be the company domain. And then you could literally input the job title keywords and then the location, and then you're going to be able to find all of it. Make sure so this is going to cost some credits. Make sure that if you need something to be if you need to know the job description, you bring that in from your other data. But if you need it because you want to write some AI based on the job description, you are going to have to enrich it, which I know is a little bit annoying, but that's just how it is. So we have 100 jobs here. How do we reach out to the sales leaders at all of these companies? So then we have all these jobs. We're just going to click. Oh, actually, let's make it a little bit more complicated. We're going to reach out to any company here who has, let's see, they have an open sales job and they're using HubSpot. So then we'll do, or let's do something. They have an open job and I can find news about them, right? So we'll go to predict leads and we'll find news about them, right? So then I don't care about what it is. I just want any news at all. And we're just going to put in a bunch of things in here. I don't care what it is. I just want a bunch of different news. And I want it to be 30 days ago, right? And so then we can hit continue to add fields. And then we're going to actually hit save and don't run on this one. And why is that? See, we have company domain over here, and we have multiple of the same company domains. I know that they're hiring. It's fine. I don't want to enrich them and waste my credits on this. So I'm going to dedupe based off of the company domain. And now we're going to delete 45 duplicate rows. Amazing. So now we'll come over here and we'll run our first 10 rows and we can get them enriched. And no events. Okay, fine. So let's run all of them, right? So we'll run all 55 and we'll see if we can find any events. So now this is a bad example, but if I wanted to, I could filter this. Let's see, I'm just going to do this a little bit. So now what we could do is, and this is just a little bit of an aside, what we could do is we could say, okay, formula output true if, and then we go to find technology stack, number of total technologies is over 80 or whatever we want to do. And so we'll say output true if blah, blah, blah is over 80 or if, or output false if number of total technologies, whoops, is under 80, right? So then we'll generate this formula. Output is correct. Okay, great. Now we can create a new view, just like we were talking about before. We can duplicate this view and we can say, find people search. And then we can filter for technology stack size, right? Because that's this over here. We can filter for technology stack size is checked, which is exactly what we want. So we have 35 out of 55 rows. We're only doing the ones who have a lot of technology installed because they have budget to install technologies, whatever reasoning you might want to do. Now we can hit find people. And now we can look up via the company domain, and then it'll be which view we want. So see how there's default view and copy of default view. I know we named this find people search. I guess we got to refresh it, but it is copy of default view that we want. So now it'll only search for contacts at this view of the people who have that filter turned on. If we made it default view, it'd be everybody, but we're going to make it this one so that we keep it low. And so now you can also look up company attributes, which that doesn't really matter. Well, so what this can do is now you've gotten all of these jobs in general, but if you only want to contact people at companies with 100 employees or less, you would use that filter right here. We're not going to do that right now. And then we're going to put in our job title. And again, we're going to go director, sales, head, sales, vice sales, VP sales, president, sales, chief, revenue, right? And we're going to do all of the searches in the United States. Whoops. And we're going to preview these people, and then we're going to pull out all these people. Great. So again, just real quick, we generated our jobs table. Now we're going to use the integration to find more people, and we're going to work on that table too. So now we'll hit import people, and we could bring it to an existing table if you already have an existing workflow, but we don't. So we'll hit new table. We'll run it over here. Now, keep in mind, this is what's keeping our data connected. So if we want to see the exact number of technologies that these people have installed on their website by the exact count, we could just click on this, and then we would be able to pull it in, which is very funny because I just said that and it's not letting me pull that in. Very, very funny. It's not letting me pull that in because it's not its own column in here. So we're just going to make it its own column. And then we'll jump over here. And then if I were to rerun these to re-enrich that data, right? See how now we have the number of total technologies? We would be able to use that as a custom variable in our campaigns if you so choose. Now we can then hit our enrichment. We could use one email column. We could use them all. Whatever you'd like to do. You could either click on Prospeo or find email right here, or you could click on work email and waterfall it, whatever you'd like to do. But we're going to be off to the races and use the full waterfall just for demonstration purposes. Now, maybe we could see that catch-all thing that I was talking about before too. That might come up as well. But then we get all this data, and then you'd be able to export it as a CSV, or you'd be able to bring it to any of your other sequencing platforms as well in here too. And so see how most of the time we're just getting everything with Prospeo, which is why I kind of just stick with Prospeo a ton. Cool. So then we've got all of these people, and now we'd be ready to sync them with whatever campaign we wanted or anything like that. And so I hope this gives you a understanding of Clay at a basic level. Check out my YouTube video for much more advanced things. I would definitely call this the 101, and there's much more advanced things that we're doing as well. I hope this was helpful for anybody who's new trying to get into Clay, and let me know if you have any questions in the comments.